So you want to be an it girl? Hi guys, and welcome back to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. Today I'm joined by Sophie Sargent, who is a college student, model, podcaster, and welcome, Sophie. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to do this. This is the first time I'm like on the other end, so I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, great. So let's torture you. I'm totally kidding. Not really, but a little bit. I'm kidding. I kid. I joke. So Sophie, tell us a little bit about you, where you're at with your life. What are all the things you're doing?
For sure. So right now, well, I'm Sophie. I'll introduce myself a little bit. I'm currently a junior at the University of New Hampshire. So for those of you who don't know New Hampshire, it's like an hour or so outside of Boston. So that's kind of the gauge I give everybody. But right now I am currently studying Homeland Security, which is very different from the trajectory, if you will, that I'm kind of going for my career. But I'm currently interning at Homeland Security Investigations for part of my degree, which is super fun. And then on the side, I also do model. Like you said, I do act. I've been in a few movies. I've also am a reporter for Ness and Sturdy Water TV. I'm an intern at Boston Man Magazine. So I kind of dabble in like a lot of things. My ultimate goal is to try and kind of combine everything. That's what I say to people, because they're very two different things. So I'm kind of just trying to take life by storm and navigate, where I want to be. And I'm just trusting that everything will work out, but I'm all about trying stuff and trying new things. And yeah.
I love that. Okay. So you're also really about like chasing dreams and going after things, like no matter what, kind of like the no fucks given way of being. So, I have a question about this, because modeling is kind of like, it's a huge dream. It's a huge undertaking. And, how did this come to be? Like, I don't wake up usually and think like, oh, like I want to be a model. Like, how did this idea of like, you want to chase a modeling career come to be?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, at all, or New England at all, that the modeling market is very kind of basically non-existent. And so when it comes to, me, I kind of like to backtrack and kind of start from the very beginning, because when I was growing up, I was watching Disney and I was like, I think it'd be cool to be on Disney. And my mom was always like, oh, well, you have to wait till you're older. You have to wait till you're older to kind of try entertainment, if you will. And so I think that because I had that, not necessarily suppression, but like, oh, if you want it someday, you can have it, but you have to like wait, kind of. So I think that waiting, and my mom maybe not throwing me into the industry and saying, okay, yeah, let's move to LA for you. Like, by her making me wait, I think it made me want it more. So once I turned 16, I feel like I experienced a lot of, high school insecurities, as one does. I wanted to like lose a bunch of weight. I wanted to look really skinny, and I wanted to model. And a lot of those things come like hand in hand, I think, especially even like 5 or 6 years ago, the industry was really still like, you have to be this big to model. And so I was trying to conform to that. And something about it like felt wrong. I kept like getting rejected. I kept submitting to agencies, and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but like, maybe I'm not. And so eventually over time, I signed with an agent when I was a senior in high school. And I didn't really start working until my freshman year, just because of availability. And, like high school, you can't really like leave all the time, or you're going to miss school. And like, so honestly, I got to this point where I was like pushing and advocating for myself so much. And even my first agent said to me, like, you will never work a high fashion job because of my look. I mean, to give you a little backstory of like how I look, I mean, I was really awkward when I was younger. So I think that's part of the reason why my mom didn't push me into the industry. But also, like, I have a very athletic build. I'm only 5'9", which is like okay for modeling.
What is
my measurement
athletic build? Like, what is an athletic build? Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think about it like, I don't really like labeling my body because I like just being me and whatever. And that's something I've realized, obviously, over the course of my journey of figuring out the industry and like maybe where I want to be and who I want to be. But when I say athletic build, like I have pretty broad shoulders. I feel like that's probably the best way for me to describe it. I'm not like built like a man, but like I'm not very like elegant, and I'm not very like graceful. Like I'm more of a like a tough and like clumsy type of person. I don't know if that's like my personality or because I grew really fast when I was younger and like my balance didn't quite get there, but that's probably how what like I would describe it because, you know, my shoulders have always been more broad than my friends and like stuff like that. So when I say athletic,
in comparison to like other people, or are we saying in comparison to other models? Because I feel like that's really tricky.
Absolutely. And I mean, the industry, it's getting better. I like to say it's getting better, but there's still a lot of work that we have to do.
Totally.
And I think the only reason that I feel the need to even say that maybe I have an athletic build is because the industry has made me think that way, right? Because never in a million years, especially when I was playing sports when I was younger, would I be like, oh, I'm built athletically. Like, no, my body's a tool. I use it to do my sports and live life. And like, that was kind of it. Like there was never a label. So I guess my point is like, when I was younger, I always used my body as a tool. Like I was an athlete. I played soccer. I got my black belt in karate when I was young. And so when I thought of my body, I never thought of it as anything else than a tool. But then when you're kind of in an industry where I fully chose to do this was something I wanted to do. And I had to mentally kind of prepare myself for these maybe judgments or whatever I was going to experience. But like, you don't really think of your body in a category until like everybody else does, if that makes any sense. And so suddenly there's all these labels. And so when I say athletic, I guess I mean compared to the sample size model, like I always compare myself to Kendall Jenner. I'm like, well, and not in necessarily like a negative way or like a positive way, but I'm like, well, I'm not Kendall Jenner because I'm not like the sample size, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm athletic. Yeah, like I'm athletic compared to the next model, maybe not like, I don't know, I'm not like the most athletic person in the world, but when you're in the industry where they try to force you into like a category or like a label. And, you know, I think the industry is progressing, but of course, I think there's work to be done in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that can be said about like entertainment industry as a whole. Like it's just really, it's progressing, changes are being made, but like progression is not complete. Like it's a never moving thing and it's still a little behind. Yeah, I think it's so interesting the way, you know, we talk about women and we talk about like models, particularly because like we really do, you know, be like, hey, you're a model, you've subjected yourself to this. By all means, let's continue to put you in a category. Like, how do you kind of deal with that labeling? And on top of it, I'd love to know, like, you know, kind of what did your peers think when you were like, I'm going to go for modeling, and like, you know, was there ever any negative voices and like how you dealt with that? Just all that negative talk that's involved. I'd love to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think also I wanted it so bad that in my own head, I was like, I think I kind of prepared myself for a lot of either judgment or people saying no, like rejection in general. For example, when I was in high school, I started, like I said, and there was a girl in my grade who looked like a model, who literally looked like Kendall Jenner, if you will. And she was signed with the best agency in Boston. And like everyone was stoked for her because she like had it all. Like she looked like like the stereotypical model, and everybody supported her. She was walking in like New York Fashion Week. And I just remember looking at her and being like, well, yeah, she looks a little different than me, but I was like, I'm just going to do it. I remember reaching out to her on Instagram and being like, listen, how can I get into this? And she gave me a very vague answer. And I was like, all right, maybe that was my first mistake. I'm just going to go for it myself because I want it this bad. I'm not going to let like a peer of mine kind of like with a vague answer stop me. So my thought was more like, yeah, I heard people talk and like, I know people were talking, but when you think of the pros and cons of it all, socially and like in the industry, like with people saying, oh, maybe your boobs are too big or your butt's too big or your waist is too big. Like, also have learned that direction or rejection is redirection.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one way of me thinking it. But also, I think I had to kind of adapt this mature mindset because I knew that people were going to say things. People kind of always said things. I mean, I did musical theater too when I was younger. So it's a very competitive thing in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at your look a lot because of the roles. They're like, well, does she fit the role? So I was almost kind of used to that level of rejection. So I kind of applied my will and my desire and my drive to just do it anyway. And finally, it made me just feel good. Like at the end of the day, I never thought of modeling as something that was going to put me in a box. I thought of modeling as something that was going to empower me and like make me feel more confident about myself. And confidence was something I really struggled with in high school because I compared myself to everybody else. But once I took a step back and did modeling, I was like, I can be my own person. I can use it to make myself feel better. So of course I'm going to do it. It wasn't because I wasn't like for any other reason. And obviously that can be a tricky industry to get into for confidence because you're almost looking, I think some girls can take it as they're looking for validation from other people.
Sure.
And then use that negatively. Because if you're not getting that validation, you might want to lose weight or you might change your mindset and think you're not good enough. When in reality, it was like, yeah, there were times where designers said to me, you're too fat. And like, we're going to send in more girls. And I was like,
they say that to your face?
To my face.
Yeah. Talk me through how you handle that, A, with grace, and like B, not carry that with you the rest of your fucking life.
I mean, I'll be honest. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my God, because the other girls that were there were obviously taller, obviously skinnier. And honestly, when I go to most shoots, I'm the biggest girl in the room and I'm not plus size by any means. If you're going to put me in a box, I'm in the average category, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are things that I like think of going into it. It's like, I have to kind of embrace being in the middle and not really having a box or whatever. I have to embrace that. But when you get that sort of level of rejection, I feel like I can't really talk as much because I'm not a plus size model, if you will, in air quotes. Like I hate giving like boxes and stuff, but the industry does it. So it's like, yeah, but so I feel like I can't really say to an extent, I can't imagine how they feel because they must get it so much more. But at the same time, it's like, when I first heard that, it like baffled me because I was like, I know that I'm not fat. It was just like, I think the way that it was said to me was like almost aggressive. And then I think what made me feel worse maybe about the situation was like, oh, we'll just send in the next group of girls. Because it just made me realize like you are replaceable in this industry. And I don't think I'm replaceable as a person by any means. But then it made me realize like, okay, if this is how it's going to be, like, I can feel the feels, but like, what's next? If that makes sense. Because if I sit on it too long, it's going to make me feel like shit. It's going to make me want to quit. And at this point in time, I think this could have been a really big test for me because I was about probably 17 or 18 when somebody said this to me. Yeah. And so I'm thinking to myself, this could be an ultimate test. This is how it's going to be. And if this is the worst that I feel right now, that's fine. And, one thing that not really to ramble about this more, but like, you have to remember too, like your body is your body. It can't really change. And when somebody's rejecting you based on your body, they're not thinking about the bigger, broader scale. They're not thinking about your personality. They're not thinking about your potential. They're not judging you on how funny you are, how smart you are, how all these other things that you could potentially bring to the table. They're not thinking about that. They're just looking at you from the outside. So in a way, that also helped me come to terms with it because I know that there's more to me than just how I look or if I can fit in clothes.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting thing. I think, about the entertainment industry. It's kind of like on one hand, it's kind of like the assignment is to show up, be you, look how you look. Some other industries, I would say, they really are checking personality too. But, and if not, you're not a right fit. You don't have the thing we're looking for. You don't fit literally the blueprint next. And it's like
Mhm.
very personal industry and then not at all at the same time. It's literally also extremely dispersonal because it's just you have it or you don't.
Right.
And we kind of forget like the human side. Like I think those things are really hard to deal with. And like, I mean, if someone had said to me at 17, you are fat, like I had already made that narrative in my head, but probably by that point even, and like I, you know, definitely had my bat with like disorder eating already. Like I would for sure developed a full-blown eating disorder. Like there's not a doubt in my mind. So it's like, how do you really like manage to like keep this mental strongness around this, like kind of like pushing off like that's you not me? Like I don't know if I could do that.
I would say a big person I looked up to throughout my high school years was Camille Kostek. I feel like I kind of okay, so to
I
explain
don't
who
even know
Camille
who
is,
that is.
that's okay. So she's
Great.
not like super popular, but I follow Sports Illustrated really closely. And I
Great.
think that's one way I kind of rationalize with all of this too is I follow brands that at least portray like normal people.
Mhm.
And Camille Kostek got the cover, I want to say like when I was in high school, and she's dating Rob Gronkowski, big football player.
Right.
If you don't know, it's okay.
I kind of know. I've heard the name.
So he's like, he was on the Patriots, so that's kind of why I
Oh,
know
that's a
like,
big fucking deal for you. Yes.
and that's a big deal in New England, obviously. So he and Camille were together. I found Camille through, I'm pretty sure through Gronk. And I've just followed her throughout high school because she has a very similar body to me. She is like curvy. She's probably like, I think she's my height too. I think she's like 5'8" or 5'9".
Mhm.
We just have a lot of similarities. We have different like faces and stuff, but in terms of like body, we're pretty similar. And I watched her go from like being a Patriots cheerleader. And I just kind of analyzed her career as she's kind of moved up like the chain or the whatever, the pedestals. And she started as a Patriots cheerleader. She made her way up and signed with an agency in New York. She got Sports Illustrated swimsuit and she was the cover. And now she's in like movies, she's hosting TV shows. And I just thought to myself, like, well, if I look pretty much exactly like her body wise, there's definitely room for me. I just have to find it. And I
Mhm.
think one of my biggest faults looking back on modeling and maybe rationalizing with everything is that I was too modeling focused because I know that there's more to me. I know that I have a personality. Camille is she has a super big personality. She's kind of hopping around into like 100 different things. She's not like in one box. And I think that if I like were to change something that I did, I think I would have maybe tried to go more into acting immediately or go more into like reporting immediately or media immediately, like just kind of touching on all of the boxes instead of putting all of my eggs in one basket with modeling, thinking that it was going to make me this like huge career. If that
Wow,
makes sense.
that's really weird because I'm kind of facing a similar bat. I'm an actor, and I've definitely put like prior, especially to having the podcast. I graduated college. I put all eggs in on acting. Like it was all in on red. I have driven myself crazy to a crazy level of burnout that I'm like kind of having to like emotionally and even somewhat like physically deal with right now. And like, you know, I did pick up other things across the line, you know, but I'm dealing with a weird, you know, do you put all your eggs in one basket and be like the expert at the thing and like still shoot your shot and just know there's a good chance it might not fucking work? Or do you have like, you know, for instance, like producing, directing, editing, podcasting, whatever, do you like which one do you actually think like is there's no right way to succeed in the entertainment industry,
Mhm.
but you know, it's really a very interesting map because like I can't figure out which one really is suitable for even myself.
And listen, that's why I'm all for like, now that I'm in college and like I'm almost done and I've been looking back on like my years, I kind of hate to say it, but I'm really happy that COVID happened because it made me realize how much I disliked the average normal college experience.
Wow.
And it made me, yeah, it's bizarre because I'm a very social person. I love being with people. Yeah, it gets tiring because I say I'm an outgoing like introvert kind of, but
Mhm.
like it made me realize I really like being home. I really like having my own space to work on what I work on and fuel my body with the right things, sleep, and like just like wake up the next day and be excited to do what I want to do. And I think that if COVID didn't happen, I wouldn't have realized my potential, and I wouldn't have realized like there's so many things that I can do. Just because like, with COVID, I could have opportunities to new things because they were online, right? So like maybe starting a podcast, I could do Zoom, or maybe auditioning for something that usually I would have to like spend $1 million to go to New York and like be in a casting room for 5 minutes and then probably get rejected. Now I can do it from my room. Like, and I started to reach out to people. I started to take time to network and connect with more people, because one thing I love to tell people, and this is kind of like a little slightly off topic, but with college, it's such a great time to learn. It's such a great time to, and not just in the classroom, to put yourself in situations that you're like, oh, this might be cool for my future, but I don't actually know. And then you try it. And if you hate it, great. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Because then you never want to do it again. Or if you love it, great. Like keep going, pursue it more. And these are all things that I've been able to do now that I'm home. And I'm sure you can do this from a dorm. I mean, I was doing it from a dorm for a little bit too. It was just tricky, like with roommates. So I guess my point is like, yeah, you can put your eggs in one basket, but why would you do that right now when we're like in our 20s and we're like young, and there's still so much opportunity, and you can use the title of a student for literally anything. Like you can be like, I'm a student, I want to learn this. And they're like, great. Okay. And then they'll let you come. All you have to do is ask. Like all you have to do is ask, and you'll be surprised how many people will say yes to things because you're a student and because you asked. You know what I mean?
That's the student. Unfortunately, the student ticket has long since sailed for me, but I'm like 26, so I'm like on the edge of being closer to 30. And so I don't get to use that one, but I use the podcast. I do. I really do.
That's
that's
great.
the thing. Yeah. And you have to be able to ask people things. Honestly, I can preach it a lot more than I can say I've done it. But like, think about how much you'd be willing to help somebody in an expert, like be into something that you're into, that you might be an expert in. You would be willing to help them. So why do you think somebody else wouldn't help you? But like we can talk ourselves out of any, I mean, I'm the first to admit that I can talk myself out of anything by like, hearing some bullshit once upon a time. If I was in a casting director thing and someone said something to me negatively, like I'll take that with me, so we can talk our stuff silly.
It's true. And I mean, I won't lie. Like I've had my fair share of defeat, but I'm happy that I've had it now, because and even you're 26, we're both still young enough to be like, okay, this didn't work. Like, let's just push it aside. It doesn't matter, because we're so young enough that it's like, what's the point of sitting here and worrying? You know what I mean? And that may be like a privileged thing for me to say, because I get that there are some people that, do have to work and don't have the opportunity to go to college, or like don't want to go to college. And there's so many different things that you can do. But I like that you said podcast, because if you're not in college, like that's a perfect example of how to ask somebody for help on something, or for a new networking connection. Like you just have to think about like your interests and then kind of go from there, or like what's going for you and go from there.
Totally. Yeah. I want to hear a little bit, about you and like how you kind of deal with like not necessarily industry negative chatter, but a little bit about like the people around you, maybe even like people that you're somewhat closest to, acquaintances. Like, how do you deal with like the chatter of them about you? Do you think people, talk about the whole thing, or do you think people leave you alone and you don't give a fuck? That's what we aim to.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the person. I think that people from like my hometown maybe have more to say than people from college.
Nice.
And I think there's a number of reasons for that. One of which, obviously, I spent my whole childhood with the people from my hometown. And I went from being like some like nerdy girl to like all of a sudden like modeling, and like, I don't know, like I had like a bunch of social problems and like I was anxious in high school. And so I feel like I was a completely different person. So I think it would be much easier for those types of people to talk. Do they talk? Maybe. I don't know, because I don't associate myself with those people anymore. I do have like a few friends from high school, but they're very like, you're clearly doing something good, so just keep going. Like they're not judgmental. But my college friends, I think it's interesting because I'm in a sorority. And I feel like I'm not really I thought I would be a sorority girl, and I don't think I am. And that's not to knock the sorority. It's just that I'm doing my own thing. I don't even really have time for it, to be honest. So the one thing I have noticed about college and girls in college, or whatever, my friends in college, is like being in a sorority has opened my eyes to two different types of girls and how they handle like their insecurities. I'm sure there are more boxes, but there are like main boxes, I guess. There are some girls who will ask for help. They'll be like, okay, so I kind of want to do what you do. How can I get from point A to point B? Whether they know me really well or they don't, they'll still ask for advice. Which I think is interesting, because some girls won't really give you the time of day, and then when they want something, they do. And I'm like, all right, like, not that I'm like Zendaya, but like, at least be nice to me when you see me out, like if you're gonna ask me for advice. So there's that. But then there's also the girls who feel intimidated, and they feel like, oh, this girl is like walking into a room and just like owning the space and like owning herself, and like doesn't really care about like what other people are going to say about her, like what she's doing. Cause I just kind of like dance to the beat of my own music in a lot of ways. And so I think that that's another thing too, is like sometimes girls will, even in ways that you don't really think you did anything wrong, or like you're just having a conversation, like they'll be like snappy or petty. They won't let something go. And you're like, okay, is this because there's actually a problem, or is this because you're like insecure of me? And this is something that's taken me a while to kind of to realize too, because I don't like to think that way. I don't like to think that I'm better than anybody else, in air quotes, because I don't want to think like that. I'm not better than the next person. I just think that maybe my energy is a lot, and like my presence is a lot, because I'm sure of myself. And that can be a lot for people to handle, especially girls in college, when you're surrounded by a bunch of other girls. And it's like a mean girl hierarchy sometimes. And there's just socially, it's really hard, because you're either like an alpha or like you're a beta in a way. You're either a mean girl or you're super nice and you let everything kind of go under the rug. And again, not trying to categorize people, but coming from a sorority perspective, it's like, that's how it is. So if you intimidate the mean girl, you're in like shitty waters in a way, you know? So I feel like even just from the basics, like people either asking for help when I don't really know them, people kind of coming out of the woodworks being like, how'd you get here? Or, I mean, I appreciate helping my friends. I love my friends. And this is talk shit about the sorority community, because I do like my friends in my sorority. It's just interesting to see how, you know, people interact with me. And I get it. I'm the weird one, because I'm doing things different than most people do in New Hampshire, obviously. So of course I'm the weird one, and this is all like weird to everybody kind of. But then again, I'm just like everybody else. Like, I just kind of want to be treated like the next person, if that makes sense. I just do different things and want to do different things in my career.
Totally.
And put myself in uncomfortable situations to try and grow. And that's scary, I think, too, for a lot of people.
I think when people put themselves in situations that, you know, might, you know, seem in that early kind of like pre-phase, the, you know, what's that? I don't want to say casting, but like drafting. I always use sports analogies.
Yeah.
That drafting phase of like getting yourself to the next stage in your career, it's like a little awkward. It's a little awkward for you. It's a little awkward for them. And like the doubt can like creep the fuck in that stage, because also like it's almost like we're almost there, but we're not, but we're trying, but we're not, you know? And I think that's when people get really judgy, like so judgy, particularly. And don't get me wrong, I am a girl's girl. I barely have guy friends. Like really am a super girl's girl, but like where girls kind of can get bitchy about other girls is when someone is trying to make it to the next level. Once they get to the next level, everybody, oh, I knew her and blah, 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 and whatever, you know. Can't say I haven't done that probably at some point, but yeah. It's very
well, and that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not talking shit about the sorority community because everybody's figuring it out. Like, college is such a weird time and everybody's going to do their own thing. I've just decided to be really, really bold with my choices. And so it is what it is. And maybe I portray in a way where other people feel like they have to put up their guard to talk to me. And maybe that's my fault because I agree with you. I like to be a girl's girl. I just think that the second somebody tries to be petty or like mean, I just immediately remove myself from the situation. So maybe, you know, like maybe I'm not giving them enough of a chance, or I don't know. Every situation is different. But I agree with you with that. And that's why I don't take it personally, because I know that why would I do that? Like everybody's changing. We're in such an influential part of our lives. Like it doesn't make sense to do that. And I could even change my mind next year. I could be like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Like, totally. You know what I mean?
Talking about that, like staying the course of something, like, you know, we go through huge like ups and downs like throughout our lives. And this month, like we are kind of like all about holding yourself accountable and like, how do you like stay the course on like a bad day? Or even like I'm going through like honestly a bad month. Like I'm just having 2 bad months. Like I don't know about this acting shit anymore. Like how do you really fucking stay the course when things are just not always glamorous or cool or whatever, or even if it was once upon a time and now you're kind of like just in a lull. Like staying the course in those moments can be tough. I'd love to know how you like handle that.
Definitely. That's a really good question. I would say I like to surround myself with people that make me better. Because you know, when I do that, it makes me feel more motivated. So like if I am experiencing a rut, I will be like, okay, who can I surround myself with? Like my best friend, my family, maybe like mentors of mine or people that I view as mentors, people that I know are going to like inspire me and be like, kind of like remind me of my worth and remind me of like why I'm doing what I'm doing in a way. Mm-hmm. So I like to surround myself with good people. I also just like to take care of myself. Like if I find myself really stressed or really like, because what I'm doing, I'm supposed to love it, right? So if I'm not loving it, I will just take a step back and be like, okay, we're not loving it right now, and evaluate the situation. Is it something that I'm, you know, is it my mental health? Am I unhealthy right now? Or am I just not loving what I'm doing? Is it the environment I'm in? Is it school? Like I try to find the root of the problem and then kind of act accordingly, because I mean, we all need our rest. We all sometimes need to prioritize other things than some other things. And recently, like, for example, I mean, my life has been pretty chaotic recently. I just went through a breakup, no, that's okay. I got out of a relationship that was almost 3 years long. And then so I went through like a month of dealing with, well, I say a month of dealing with it, but I feel like I've come out already like a really stronger person. And then my grandfather just passed away. So I'm like, okay, so we're just like getting all of the things and they're all kind of happening. And like, but that's okay because that's also life. And it's like, okay, I like to believe that everything happens for a reason and like everything is kind of playing out the way that it should. And so in my head, I'm like, all right, this is just one of like the lows of life. And like, that's okay. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. Consistency is key. And like, take care of yourself. Like, I feel like that's probably the best way I would sum it up, because I'm okay with taking breaks if I have to, even if I feel lazy or get the anxiety that like I'm being lazy, because I'm a person that feels like if I'm not doing something, it's bad. And I shouldn't think like that. Yeah. It's horrible. That's probably just a product of like Gen Z and all that BS, but like,
I love that you just put me in that category. I'm like so hard a millennial, but like, please, by all means.
But it's a Gen Z trait, I feel like.
It's a Gen Z trait. I mean, I also think, I don't know who it is. It's between the two. But yeah, like if you're not doing anything, you're lazy, you're stupid, you're unsuccessful, you're unmotivated. Like it's a very sharp drop.
Yes. And I mean, it's so hard to like, sorry, that was my chair. It's so hard to like come to terms with that initially, but once you kind of, you're like, okay, that's so irrational and like, so maybe even borderline like immature. Like mature people are going to take care of themselves and like understand like you're a freaking human. Like you're going to do what you have to do to take care of yourself. And that's a big thing is like on the hard days, I just sit down. I love to write. I love to exercise. I just like take my dogs for a walk, go drive and get a coffee, like do the simple shit because that makes you feel better or makes you reset, sleep a little extra, like, because it goes a long way. You're not going to be, especially in this industry, you're not going to be creative if you're not taking care of yourself.
Right. If you're in entertainment at all, you absolutely like the priority should be taking care of yourself, but it's not. It's to like work and grind and hustle. And like that is literally the death of creativity. But I love what you said about like taking care of yourself to get a coffee. It kind of reminds me of something. I want to say it was Zendaya who said it. It might not be true. But we're huge Zendaya stans these days. I'm just, whatever. So in this case, she might have said it. She talked about using the nice soap. She was like, like the pandemic hit and she was all like, why am I saving this nice soap? And, why am I not using it? And I was, she's like, really, right. It teaches you to use the nice soap, to take care of yourself. I mean, totally also acknowledging that I'm speaking highly from a place of privilege, but like, to go get the freaking coffee that makes you feel good, or, take the extra hour to sleep in, or, work till 9 p.m. and watch TV till 1 a.m., wake up, do it all again, really like, that's what I think is holding yourself accountable, is like setting yourself up to take care of the things you need to do. And something I've found myself saying a lot to other people, and I should probably say a little bit more to myself, is like, you can't afford not to do that. Like, you can't afford not to take care of yourself, because at some point, like, you're going to start digressing if you don't care for yourself along the way. But
yeah, or burnout. Like, I mean, I feel like too, especially if you have a problem that's like deeply rooted in you, whether it's like trauma or mental health or even like physical health, like a physical health condition, if you push that to the side and you don't take care of it, it's only going to get worse. And like, I've learned that the hard way with anxiety, where I just kind of like let it play out. I'm like, oh, it'll go away. I'm just nervous. But no, like address the problem, because you'd rather squash it while it's fresh than let it kind of build. And then you have to kind of take everything apart and like really break it down. And then it just takes longer. And like just take care of yourself. Like, I know it's, again, and we go back to that idea of it's privileged. We're speaking from a place of privilege maybe, but it's like, it's true. You have to, because it just goes back to that idea. But
exactly. Holding yourself accountable is really hard, because you're really the only person truly who can hold yourself accountable. Sure. I can tell X, Y, and Z that I'm going to do this by X, Y, and Z like a day, and they can check in on me. But at the end of the day, you're going to be the only person, to know like what was the quality you did that with, what was the energy you put for it, what was the time you set it for. Like, you're really the only person who can say like, I did my absolute best and I know it, because you were the only person to see there what had happened. That totally sidetracks me. But like, my best friend yesterday, she had an interview and she told me, she's like, I know I did the best. And like, I knew she had done the best she could because of the way she said it. I was like, you gave it your fucking all. And like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're the only person who's going to know that. Like, I can't tell her, like, you gave her it your all. Like, it's not going to mean the same thing at all. But at the same time, it has such a negative flip side, because you can be like, I know what I put into it. And like, you could still be like, I put everything fucking in there and it wasn't enough. And it's like, how do we balance out holding ourselves accountable, giving everything we want, and just like letting it go and not making it a negative thing, I should have done more? Or like, what if you really just in that moment, you couldn't have done more? It's tough.
It's all about understanding, like, first of all, understanding yourself, but also understanding that, and this is probably the biggest lesson I've learned so far in my 20s, is that nobody's going to hold your hand. Nobody's going to walk you through life, even your significant other, even your family. You have to go with you, what feels right, what is best for you, what resonates with you most. I'm all about energy and like that kind of stuff, and like what feels good at the end of the day to you, and just like finding ways to push yourself in ways that feel good to you. Like, I don't mind stepping out of my comfort zone because I know that that risk may lead me to a great success, but the next person may be like, you know, what makes me step out of my comfort zone is applying for a job or hitting up that guy. Like, it can be anything. But it's all just understanding and boiling down to the idea that like, it's you're choosing how you're going to live in a way, like, because it's all about your mindset and who you are. And it's like, if something's calling you, do it, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Right. No, absolutely. I completely agree. Like, nobody else is. And I had a similar story with my parents, wanting to go after acting. And, on one hand, it heartbreaks me every day that they didn't let me do it, because maybe I'd be farther along in the career I want. But at the same time, like, I know it's all me. Like, every inch, every move I've made, it's all me. And like, that's how I've held myself accountable. Not saying I'm where I want to be at all. We've got a long way to go. But like, that's the thing. Like, when it's really you that's putting your mindset, the efforts, the worth into it, it feels different. I think other people sense that too.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy too, if you have like maybe not the best circumstances or not like your ideal circumstances. Like, for example, I wanted to go to a really big college. I thought going to a big like state school would change my life and it would be so fun and like whatever, XYZ. And then I ended up at UNH and I was like, okay, not my first choice, but like money, it's the cheapest. Like, I'm going to go here because I'm not going to pay $1 million when I leave, obviously. But then it's like, now that I'm at UNH, well, I could have been like, oh, this is stupid. Like, I could have had such a negative mindset. I could have been like, well, I don't want to like do anything. I don't want to hang out with people. I don't want to like try new things. I'm just going to like sit in this like sulking feeling of being at the school that I didn't want to be at. But instead I was like, okay, I addressed what I had and I was grateful for what I have. And I was like, all right, I'm in New Hampshire. So maybe not the best place for entertainment or modeling or whatever, but I was like, what can I do? Right? Like, what can I do with what I have? And then it goes back to using the student card, or like being young people. Older people love mentoring younger people or giving them advice or helping them, giving them an opportunity. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm an hour from Boston, not ideal, but still better than having nothing. So I would drive to Boston for stuff and like reach out to people in Boston. And now all of a sudden it's like, you're building your network. You're starting to maybe get interviews for internships or like new opportunities. You're getting a new casting. Like, it's just these things that like, it may be a slow buildup if you kind of start where you didn't want to start, but like, that's what makes it more worth it in the end. If you just work with what you have and stay, thankful for what you do have. And then you just keep going with it. And again, I said it before, but I'll say it again. Rejection is redirection. So if something doesn't work out, it's just going to kind of bring you to the next part of where you're supposed to be, I think.
I love how that all just really like tied in there. Yeah, I think it's all about like, it is, your life is what it is and it's what you make it, but it's also like what glasses and perspective we choose to look at it with, to see like how it's going to be. Sophia, I have one final question for you, kind of, maybe two. That's a total lie. What is your advice for like holding yourself accountable?
Totally. Okay. So I know it's easier said than done, and it's a huge mindset practice. I think holding yourself accountable, because especially when we're as young as we are in our 20s, it's so easy to look at our friends. It's so easy to look at the person next to you or your family and kind of be like, what should I do? Like, kind of, who am I? Give me guidance. And I think that it's like, you have to disassociate from that for a second and like think about what you want. And that can be really uncomfortable and that can be really hard, but you're never going to be fully happy if you don't do what you want to do. So I think kind of holding yourself accountable is like, kind of ties into happiness, like how happy you are. And if you're doing things that make you happy. For me, I think it wasn't necessarily an easy journey. Coming from New Hampshire, doing what I want to do, going into Boston and kind of doing my thing. I don't know if this is making sense, but I think that like, it could have been easy for me to look at my peers and be like, oh, they're sleeping all day. I can do that too because I'm in college. Or I could look at my family and be like, well, they're living in New Hampshire. I could get a cozy job in New Hampshire when I graduate. And like, you can just look at things small-minded, or you can open your perspective and look at it in a million different ways. And whatever draws you, I think, is where you should be. So don't necessarily look at your peers. Don't look at the people around you. Look inward and evaluate inward, whether that's periodically or like every day. Like, do things for you every day, because those will keep you accountable. I think it's okay to be with your friends if you want to be with your friends, and it's okay to do things that you want to do, but like understand that having you time and doing things for you and your goals and what is going to make you feel fulfilled at the end of the day is most important. And like, other girls or other people may try to take that away from you, but you have to kind of like remember what you want and what is true to you. And you have to stick with that and stay strong with that. Cause it's so easy to get lost from it. Like just in general.
So much
like,
out there. You can get lost in it like a million fucking ways. I completely agree.
Yeah. Like I'm talking about it like in the college perspective, but I mean, it could be anything. It could be
you
like
can
a
get
bad
lost
habit.
In just the social media scroll of it. Like of being like, this is what my life should look like. And it's not. You know,
well, and then you feel unmotivated. And
right,
it's like,
there's so many ways to get lost.
Yeah. And like, this is slightly off topic, but also in the same aspect. It's kind of going back to that idea of perspective. I use social media as a tool because you network so much, you can meet so many new people, you can collaborate with people and create, whether you want to create content or meet somebody new or get a job that you've always wanted. Social media can be really bad if you look at like Photoshop and like things that are unrealistic. But if you're thinking about it realistically, it can really benefit you in a lot of ways. So I think perspective, even just in general, is also another great thing of keeping you accountable or holding yourself accountable or going for your goals, because you have to view yourself positively and you have to view what you're doing positively. You could follow all those negative or those people that make you feel negative. But if you follow people that are hyping you up or close friends or whatever that are going to make you feel good, it really affects your mindset, the things that you take in as well, like the content you take in.
We talk about that all the time, about like what you consume matters a lot, because you'll just find it affects you in ways. And I also do think if you're in a creative field, you have to watch how much you consume too, because like you want to have original ideas, not just like copy paste other ideas. You know, not saying I'm perfect with it at all, but it's just something I've noticed. Sophia, you are so lovely. You are so grounded, and I am just dying to know like what's next for you. What's the big plans you have, and tell everybody also where we can find you.
For sure. This is a question that I love and hate. Because I feel like I can always change my answer. Right now, I am looking to move to LA for maybe a period of time. Just try to test the waters, see if it's something I want to do. Would love to get more into hosting, maybe like a show or on the news or something like that. Kind of take my reporting skills to the next level, just write some more. Those are kind of like my main things right now. But my ultimate goal, biggest goal of all time, Sports Illustrated Swim.
Love it.
I would love to be in the magazine. That's just like my ultimate goal, just like feels right. And it feels like I resonate.
That is. Yeah.
I really
very
oddly. It's very oddly specific.
No, but that's what we need. Like, I think people should be that specific.
Yeah. And that goes into like manifesting and stuff, but definitely we'll be doing more of that. Journaling. Yeah. All those good things. Of course, taking care of myself, allowing those breaks, but yeah. And then in terms of social media and finding me, oh, wait, backtrack. I'm rebranding my podcast. So it's going to be the Sophie Sargent Show. I think that's what I'm going to call it. And it's going to be more of like talk show. I want to have like just a wide variety of people, make it almost more like a hosting situation, and less of like, I don't know, interviewing in a way. I don't know. I'm going to rebrand it. We're going to work it out. It's going to be fun and fine. But it'll definitely have some more personality to it. So, and yeah, I'm also going to be in a movie this summer. So I'm excited.
Woo! Very exciting.
I know. Crazy. So a lot of things that I want to do / going on. But yeah, on social media, you can find me at Sophie Sargent on Instagram with a PH. That's probably where you'll see the most of me, or TikTok, which is at Sophie Sargent 19. But if you find me on Instagram, you'll probably find me everywhere else because everything's kind of in the same thing. So
In the ether. It's all in the
but
same
yeah,
area. Yeah, it's all in the same
I mean, yeah, Linktree, right? Like it's all
that's
together.
right. Yeah. Well, Sophie, thank you so much
So
for
yeah.
taking the time, and thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next Tuesday.